Hello all, I hope you're doing well today. Firstly, sorry if you can hear some drilling and banging in the background. I'm on my travels and they're doing some renovation works next door, so apologies for that. But anyway, on with the video of the day. We've all heard this phrase in this day and age that we're a nation built by immigrants. You get it in Australia, France, UK, and of course, where it emanated from originally, America. A lot of corrosive ideas we're suffering from in this day and age tend to come from the United States. And I know I have one or two American viewers, so please don't take that personally. I very much view you as my European brethren. However, it's quite clear that your country has been kidnapped by a quite aggressive ideology which seeks to undermine your whole identity and render you part of globalist liberalism. Yet because we're all part of the globalist empire in this day and age, with international finance capital headquartered in America, it means the rest of the Western world has to follow suit. So as absurd as it is, we all have to pretend we're a nation built by immigrants. Now, all this is patently absurd when it comes to ancient European nations. I even think it's absurd when it comes to America, which is clearly built on European, especially Anglo-French philosophy, and by the British people themselves, as well as a big dollop of the Germans and then smatterings of Irish and Italians. Essentially, it's a European nation with Anglo roots. Now, as explored many times on the channel, we're in the era of money power, and money power doesn't like any obstacles to its sovereignty, so it doesn't like homogenous nations, it doesn't like blocks to the advances of finance, and that means that it wants open borders that capital and people can flow over easily. Of course, what this means is you can undermine the homogeneity of a given region or country and rule it from the top, which is exactly why they push this line that we're a nation of immigrants, and to their delight, this is picked up by naive leftists who think they're anti the system, who fulfill that rhetoric for them and pretend it's empathetic and humane to be open borders and the rest of it. Yet it's interesting to go through the background because it explains why The Guardian publishes pieces like this from Nesreen Malik. Immigrants built Britain, now their conservative children are disowning them. Yeah, that'd be the same conservative government that was running record levels of immigration into Britain, around 1 million people a year, and pretty much all from the third world, but still too racist for Nesreen and The Guardian. Yet there's a subtext to all of this that many of us have noted over the years, and that's that if you're a Westerner, you will be told that your nation was built by immigrants, that you have no claim to your historic homelands, your ancestors didn't do anything, they're just disgusting bigots who had to wait for real people, indigenous people, to come over with real identities and show you how to build things with their big brains and hard work. And this is how the sleight of hand of globalist liberalism works. On the surface, the immigrants coming in are oppressed. They're, quote, minorities, even though they're not in the global context. But anyway, the point is they're allowed an identity because it's been taken from them. You, meanwhile, are not allowed one. And if you do try and have one, you're basically Hitler. And this is why many of the groups over here will use their supposed oppression as a sort of shield which belies an ethno-narcissism in which they believe they, quote, built the country. Exhibit A is Labour's John McDonnell.
Would you accept that will therefore attract more people to come here illegally?
You're talking to a grandchild of an Irish migrant. We built the country, we built the roads,
fantastic.
We staffed the NHS.
But you came here legally, John. You didn't come here illegally.
Again, classic case of a leftist thinking he's anti this system but is doing the will of globalism. You know, I'm Irish, we built the country, ethno-pride, and then so you need open borders. But anyway, there's Exhibit A. Apparently the Irish built the country, but he's got competition from a Pakistani Brit who's the leader of this independent candidate alliance, basically to block the Muslim vote. I told you that was going to happen. Anyway, he thinks Pakistanis rebuilt the country and they're here to take over.
Well, okay, so if you don't like it here, go to your own country.
But why would we do that when our forefathers were instrumental in rebuilding this country after World War II? It was our grandfathers who worked in the factories 20 hours. It was our grandfathers who came here and run the infrastructure. It was our grandfathers who bought you the lovely curry, which is your national dish. So how can you tell us to go? We're not going nowhere. We are here to stay. Like I say, we're not here to take part. We're here to take over.
Yeah, hilarious. Of course, I don't think they'll be getting a knock on the door at 3 a.m. for saying such things from Star Stasi, but never mind, on we go. Next up, we have a black fella who seems to be influenced by America again, that sort of public enemy, fight the power, fist in the air stuff. He thinks black people built Britain. Let him take it away.
Black people! You don't do anything with this country! You're a disgrace! You're a disgrace! The reason why you're in the streets, these streets were built by my ancestors!
You might have to take that one up with John McDonnell, mate. He's got some claims quite to the counter. We might have a black versus Irish ethno-war on the cards. But in a way, you can't blame this cretin, because A, he's probably not very bright, and B, he probably spends most of his time listening to, American rap, the conscious stuff, Public Enemy, Talib Kweli, all that sort of stuff, and thinks that he's figuring out how the system really works, again, without realising that he's part of the system himself, because they say things like Stonehenge was built by black people. And things like this, London's pride and joy, we built this city. As you can see, they're all black, and this is a campaign by Pride in London. So I think these people might be saying it wasn't just black people who built London, but lesbian black people. But again, the blacks have got competitions. A new book is claiming that it was Indians, don't you know, who actually made London. You may have noticed there's something lacking when our modern liberal media talks about who built Britain, and yeah, it's the British themselves. I mean, where were they? As I've said before, I've charted my own family back, and on my mother's side, they mostly go to the Yorkshire region, some around Northumberland and Durham, mainly Anglos with a bit of Celtic and some Scandinavian, I would assume Viking. And on my father's side, they're mainly Norman with a bit of Anglo. I actually have a shared ancestor with William the Conqueror, probably where I get my royal blood from, don't you know? However, they mainly stretch from the Kent area across to Dorset, with many of my ancestors living in and around the London area. In essence, I am an Englishman, predominantly Anglo-Norman with a smidgen of Celtic and a little bit of Viking. My ancestors have been here for thousands of years. And like many of my fellow Englishmen, what are we supposed to think our ancestors were doing all this time? Presumably we're supposed to think we were just twiddling our thumbs like the stupid idiots we are, dragging our knuckles around, breathing from our big fat mouths, saying to each other, if only some Indians and Africans could come here and show us how to be real people, people with real history that can teach us how not to be bigots and evil and build our country for us. I mean, it sounds insane, but this is essentially what the liberal system wants us to believe. It wants to close our own eyes to our own identity and our own history to accept their mythology. This is why many refer to the modern liberal brainwashing as Orwellian, because if you can control the past, if you can reprogram people to not trust or believe in their own identity, to know their own roots, you can fill their hearts, souls and heads with anything you wish and thereby control them. And you might think, yeah, but nobody actually falls for that. But they do, and they do en masse. It's what happens when you remove a people from their tradition and their own identity. It's why I believe people have often looked to the exoticism of India, pretending it's this magical land of spiritual peace and plenty. Yet when many actually go to India, they realise while there might be small pockets of spirituality, largely it's a very cold and cruel land where you'll see people begging and dying on the streets, where they'll throw rubbish into their own holy rivers, and if you're a woman travelling alone, you're highly likely to be sexually abused. Again, it's what happens when people are poisoned against their own culture. They start to believe that the rest of the world is an exotic utopia of people outside of the boundaries of racism and oppression that the Western world has caused. Such delusions were realised by these idiots, many of them from the UK, who went on a march for Palestine, all the way to Palestine, but when they got to Egypt were just beaten up by the authorities there, despite telling them, hey, you should be standing with your Muslim brothers, not beating us up. And they will beat you up, because the world isn't a Disney movie. You've been conned by money power into believing that your own identity and country are evil, and tragically, you've been divorced from your own inheritance. So with all this in mind, I think it might be time for the British and the other Western people to start raising our voices up a bit and saying, no, sorry, you didn't build our countries, we built them ourselves, and that's the reason you all want to come here. Anyway, these are my thoughts. Do let me know what you think about all this down below, and do consider subscribing to the channel if you're new. Have a great rest of the day.